Welcome everybody to Not Financial Advice Live. We do this once a week and we shift channels, and today it is on mine, thankfully. I get to see two of my friends from the space, Ben in the Cryptoverse and Guy from Coin Bureau. Gentlemen, welcome back to the show. Appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So real quick, I just want to say again, thanks to Guy. Was at the Coin Bureau live event. Really fun. Got to hang out with Guy and his crew. I also got to meet Ben and his crew, or I didn't get to meet Ben, sorry, at the end of the Cryptoverse live crew and a host of other people. And it was great. And I got to tell you, there are some interesting things ahead of what is going on. And of course, if you're not subscribed to these two gentlemen, here's Ben's channel and the Cryptoverse, links in the description, and Coin Bureau. I would like to highlight two videos for everybody to watch after this. Ben put out a banger of a video, the Cardano Outlook, which is pretty interesting. And if you're a Cardano holder, you might want to watch that. Also, there's a good one called Bitcoin Dubious Speculation. And then there was a really good one that it was him and Gareth Soloway. They've done two so far. And if you're really into data and TA and things like that, it's like a do not miss. So it's more of a back and forth than what this is. And then over at Guy's second channel, I don't know if you hold Ethereum, but this was a good video, the ETH to 50,000 crypto price prediction, which everybody loves. There's a lot of good data in their points, so check that out. But that is for everybody when they leave here. You can find that in the description. Let's talk about some questions today. And the first thing we're going to go over a multitude of things. There is this, I don't know if you've heard about this, but there was a Bitcoin ETF, apparently, by BlackRock and Fidelity and a couple of other different players. So the question that we have today is this Bitcoin ETF rally warranted and sustainable? We'll talk about what can derail Bitcoin dominance. I know I'm always talking about Bitcoin dominance. Maybe some other people have heard about this. Then we'll talk about the Powell pause or the skip. Is it enough moving forward? And then we'll get to the big question, which a lot of people have been asking, myself included, when alts? So first things first, the Bitcoin ETF rally. Now, the narrative right now is it's bullish with ETFs and bank custody of cryptos into play. Is the price action warranted for the rally we've seen? Is it sustainable? And really, you have to ask yourself, because there's so many things going on, are we really front-running the big players? Are we the ones in control? Are we getting in front of BlackRock and all the different institutional players? So I will start with Guy and see what he says about this one. Is this sustainable? Is it warranted? Are we front-running big institutional money?
Yeah, lots of good questions. It's, I guess to start with, yeah, I mean, I think the rally that we're seeing certainly is warranted, given the potential inflows, into BTC, not just from a BlackRock ETF, but I mean, working on the assumption that BlackRock's application gets approved, which I think there's a pretty good chance that it will. I mean, let's not rule anything out. This is the SEC we're dealing with after all. But it seems to me such a otherwise strange time to be filing this sort of application. Spot ETFs applications were a meme a few months ago, weren't they? Maybe, was it last year? Maybe towards the end of last year. Just everyone just sending in, filing a spot Bitcoin ETF application. Every man and his dog was at it.
Yeah.
And the SEC just sort of, just kind of seemed to bury its head in the sand, didn't it? Just sort of ignored them, and then gradually one by one they all got rejected. So if at a time like this, when the SEC is, for want of a better term, at war with the crypto industry, it's very strange, I think, to see this sort of application come in. But I mean, BlackRock, it's obviously they don't come any bigger. They don't come kind of any more powerful or better connected. So you've kind of got to assume that they know something the rest of us don't. Or at least they are extremely confident that their application will be approved, or has an extremely good chance of being approved. And of course, so let's work on the assumption that the SEC does do its mates at BlackRock a favor and approve this application. That would obviously we'd see a fair bit of inflow, I think, from that. That would obviously be because a spot ETF would be attractive to institutional and retail investors. I think there would be a fairly wide spread of people who would be willing to buy shares in that sort of vehicle, and get their crypto exposure that way, in a much more regulatory compliant way, in a lot sort of safer way, if you like, that doesn't involve having to self custody their crypto or their Bitcoin or anything like that. So I think we would see pretty hefty inflows from that. And obviously, if BlackRock is to be successful, then that would presumably provide a blueprint of sorts for others to follow suit. And I think Wisdom Tree has resubmitted their application. I think Invesco has as well. Everyone's kind of, this corpse is coming back to life, so to speak. And so, assuming that all kind of goes ahead, that would signal some pretty big inflows into BTC, and I can see that pumping the price a heck of a lot in the short term. Assuming that the SEC doesn't turn around and go, no, we still don't like the idea of a spot ETF application. Thank you very much. And I mean, I should say as well, we shouldn't rule that out. People obviously getting, the whole industry seems to be getting very excited about this, about these applications, and we've obviously been here before. And I think it's worth pointing out that, or it's worth remembering that, I think if it doesn't get approved, if even BlackRock can't get this sort of approval, then no one else, I think, has really got any hope. So if it does get turned down, then I guess we're going to have to rule out the idea of a spot Bitcoin ETF for the foreseeable future, really. And I think that would obviously be, I think that, the disappointment from that, the fallout from that disappointment would be, I think everyone would feel that. But yeah, I think certainly at the moment, with this working on this assumption that BlackRock has some sort of information or is very confident, then yeah, I think certainly the pump that we've seen off the back of it is justified. How sustainable is it? I think we could possibly see this last for a couple more weeks perhaps, but it could of course become a sell the news event fairly quickly.
True.
And of course, we have to touch. I think you touched on, Rob, didn't you? You touched on BlackRock's incredible track record when it comes to ETF applications. What was it? 575 to 1
to 1
in favor.
Wins and losses.
Yeah, they've so they kind of know what they're doing. I think Crypto Slate put out quite an interesting article about the one that about how they've only had one rejected. I think that was because it wasn't transparent enough. And obviously that ties into kind of what the SEC has sort of said about, given as reasons for rejecting spot ETFs in the past, haven't it? They've said, I think a lot of it was to do with market manipulation,
right,
and them saying that lots of BTC trading volume was taking place on kind of unregulated and offshore exchanges. And it seems like BlackRock has found a way to kind of mitigate these fears that the SEC has, which again suggests that they're pretty confident that this will get approved.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, I will just say this, and all good points, great points. It's looking positive. We'll just say that. I personally don't think it's going to get approved, and I'm going to go against everybody, but that's just me, because that's how I think. But I will tell you one thing that is amazing to me is that in the last couple of weeks, hasn't the narrative changed pretty dramatically? Like for example, like this is us on stage at the Coin Bureau live event. And this was on Saturday. And a couple days prior, the SEC had come out and sued Coinbase and sued Binance. And it was like the worst time of everything, and everything was crashing. I think you'd see some of the alts were down like 20, 30%, somewhere around there. And then just a week and a half later, now everybody's euphoric with the Bitcoin ETF and banks like Deutsche Bank coming out and having self-custody. So these things move fast. Narratives can change, but they are good points, which would come back to, well, Ben, what do you think? Do you think that this is warranted? Do you think it's sustainable? And I guess the last question will be, do you think this is actually going to work out for the ETFs?
Yeah. So this is probably the best chance that we've had so far to get an ETF. I mean, I've kind of been in Rob's camp for a long time of like, we've been sitting here for years waiting for these ETFs And no matter how optimistic it's ever felt or seemed, they've never actually come through, at least the spot ETF. And so I definitely share in this, like, sort of the pessimism from that front. I'm also somewhat skeptical because again, I've been out of town. I haven't really been following the news. Not that I really follow it that much anyways, but like from what I read, I think that BlackRock is going to custody their Bitcoin at Coinbase, which is being sued by the SEC. So there are some like things going on like that don't really quite add up to me. But hey, I mean, again, this is probably the best chance that Bitcoin has had at this point. And I would go to say if it does get rejected, they'll probably figure out what steps they need to take to actually get it accepted in the future. Rob, I actually just put out a tweet. If you could just pull it up rather than me trying to present my screen, because I want to talk about pre-halving years in terms of whether it's sustainable or not. Normally in the pre-halving years, we don't really go into true mania phases, right? I mean, normally it's about half up and half down. And there's actually an interesting if you show the year-to-date ROI from 2023, which is that light blue line, and you compare it to the time average year-to-date ROI of 2015 and 2019, it's almost going up exactly at that time average spot. So that's an interesting metric to look at. But again, normally in the pre-halving years, we don't really see too crazy price movements. We stay within a pretty well-defined range and do not deviate too far out of it. And then things normally pick up more so in the years that follow. I actually think that the price action right now, and maybe people wouldn't agree with this, that's fine. But I think the price action right now is not related to the ETF stuff. I think the price action right now is more so related to a lot of people trading in their altcoins for Bitcoin. I mean, that's what I think it is. We've talked about this forever, right? I mean, the dominance breaking the range high. Once it does, it hesitates for a week and then explodes upward. I think that is more so the reason for the move than the ETF. So I'm not saying that there's nothing coming from the ETF side of things, but what I am saying is I think this move I think this move was happening regardless in the Bitcoin dominance side of things, and I think it's because people are just trading in their altcoins for Bitcoin, whether they're assigning the narrative to be the ETF, whether they're assigning it to be just low liquidity in the market. Whether they're assigning it to be they want to go with Bitcoin over the regulatory risk of the altcoin market. I don't know what they're going to assign it to, but I think it was going to happen no matter what. So that's kind of where I stand on it.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I mean, if you think about it, and we talked about this before, there's a little bit of a synergy between what the SEC was doing when they sued Coinbase and they sued Binance and they named all these different altcoins. They said these are securities. Especially, they're doing regulation by enforcement. So with that, people would say, well, why do I want to be in these securities as an American? Now, if you're outside America, I understand, right? So it would make sense that they'd say, this is a little bit too risky for me. I want to get into Bitcoin, maybe Ethereum. So that would stand a point. And I think also the synergistic effect also with the Bitcoin ETF, which makes a ton of sense. But I mean, I can see how that could play out. I just, when I take a look at this ETF, and there's just some funny things about it, we're one of the few that will probably say that I don't think it's going to be come through. And I've I met Simon Dixon at Guy's event. You don't know Simon Dixon? He's got a great channel. He's one of the Bitcoin OGs, bought Bitcoin at $3, invested into Coinbase and Ethereum ICO and such and so forth. But I met him here at the event, and he says, and he was responsible for the broker dealer that was sold to Coinbase. And he says, look, I know regulation. I know what it is. And he goes, I'm 100% sure that BlackRock is going to get this ETF. And I bet him, I said, okay, I'll bet you that it's not. And we have a bet going on right now. And if I lose the bet, I will wear an I Heart Mashinsky shirt. And if he loses, he has to wear the same thing. So this is one of those bets I will be happy to lose, and I will wear that shirt with pride, but I still don't think it's going to happen. All right, so that's on top of that. Let's talk about Bitcoin dominance. So I've talked about this a couple of times. Guy talks about it heavily on his channel. Ben mentions it, and I will say that it seems to be doing quite well. I think we've got 50%. Let me take a look. There's this website. into the cryptoverse. I don't know if you guys have heard about it, but there's a good one for Bitcoin dominance. And we can just see here, we can take stable coins or no stable coins. Let's include them right now. And today, 22nd or so, we're at 49.53, almost 50%. I think we actually hit it at some point. If we take out stable coins, the Bitcoin dominance level is 55%. So the question I have, we'll start with Ben because he doesn't talk about it that much. What can derail the Bitcoin dominance of what's going on right now?
I mean, I don't think it's going to be derailed.
Yeah,
I mean, I know that's a dangerous thing to say because this is where if it does get derailed, you know, you clip it and post it on Twitter, and but yeah, no, I don't think it's going to be derailed. I think that if you think about what happened with the dominance and the trading view dominance is over 51% right now. They don't use all the same things that they maybe like, you know, CoinGecko or CoinMarketCap uses. They're maybe a little bit more selective, but I don't think anything's going to be derailing it anytime soon. I think that it's likely going to go up because I think the issue is that there's so little liquidity in the altcoin market that all it takes is like a 1 or 2% move by Bitcoin in either direction for for the dominance to go up, right? Like it just seems like there's just very, very little liquidity. So I don't really think anything would derail it. I mean, even if they came out tomorrow and said the BlackRock ETF is rejected, I still don't think it would negatively impact the Bitcoin dominance. If you look at the dominance chart that you just had pulled up, and you exclude stablecoins and you apply like some type of long-term moving average to it, like if you go to that moving average up there and do like a 90-day, go down to 90, apply that. I mean, to me, it just looks like we just spent basically 2 years building out a large base to bounce off of. So it's hard for me to imagine that after such a long consolidation period that any type of single event is going to derail it. I mean, I can probably think of things that might impact it in the short term. Like I guess if something happened with the Ripple case and the SEC and it went heavily in Ripple's favor, then maybe that could slow the dominance down in the short term. Like I would say, all right, well, in that case, that might lead to a renewed interest in altcoins in the short term. But I also go back to this idea that the altcoin market, even in the early stages of a bull market, will likely bleed to Bitcoin. So it's Bitcoin that leads. It's not the altcoin market, and so that's kind of where I stand. I don't really think anything's going to derail it, at least on its quest to around 60%. So 60% is ultimately where I think it's headed. And the interesting thing is, if you look, and I've talked about this a few times, if you look at seasonality with the Bitcoin dominance, normally whatever direction it's going into September, it reverses course in September, right? So like if it's going down into September, it normally starts going up after September. That's what happened last year and the year before that. But if it's going up into that September timeframe, it normally goes down after that for a few months. So like I could see a situation where the dominance goes to, say, around 60%, plus or minus a few percent, right? It's hard to know exactly, by around that September timeframe, and then at that point, I could see people calling for 80 or 90% Bitcoin dominance. So this is where it people might lose the plot is when you get into these Bitcoin dominance rallies. Whether Bitcoin goes up or down, it will cause a lot of people to sort of leave their altcoins, right? And I mean, this is probably something they should have. Well, I mean, I don't offer financial advice, right? But I mean, if you did that 18 months ago and you were riding the dominance rally, it would have worked out. The danger is the longer you wait to do something like that, the more you risk of literally like selling your altcoin at the bottom, right? Like at its bottom. And I'm not talking about the USD pairs because those are irrelevant. I'm talking about their Bitcoin pairs. The longer you wait, there's a chance that you end up being that capitulation wick on their Bitcoin pairs. And so, I think that we could see it the dominance continue on for a few more months. And then after it gets to around 60%, I would expect it to show some weakness for a little bit, whether it's 58% or 62%. I don't know exactly where it's going to stop, but I would imagine it would start to show some weakness, maybe in like the latter 3 months of the year or something, or maybe even the first couple of months of next year. But even in 2024, I wouldn't really be that surprised to see the dominance go on another rally. Normally, that's what it does after the halving. At some point, the Bitcoin goes on a rally, and the dominance goes up with it. So, I don't really think there's anything that's going to derail the dominance rally in the short term. I think that what would likely cause it to fade is basically just everyone finally capitulating and admitting Bitcoin is king. But normally, once that happens, then the altcoin market starts to find some renewed strength. And I think the hard part to communicate, and I feel like don't always do the best job at communicating this, is when I talk about the altcoin reckoning all the time, right, it's on their Bitcoin pairs, right? Like that's the important metric. It's how they're performing against Bitcoin. Because as always, right, if you're making that choice to go buy an altcoin and you're just watching the Satoshi value of your portfolio go down week after week after week, then you're doing something wrong. And if you were to go look at the last time Bitcoin was at 30K, and you go look at where the altcoins were the last time Bitcoin was at 30K, most of them were higher than they are today, right? Most of them are a lot higher than they are today. And that's because why? Because they get chopped up when Bitcoin goes down. They get chopped up when Bitcoin goes up, and they can't capture the bid in the same way that Bitcoin can. They just can't. Not at this phase of the cycle. So, I mean, my thinking is that nothing's going to derail the Bitcoin dominance rally right now, but maybe in 2 or 3 months, it would start to fade.
All right. Fair enough. I will just say this. I think everybody, when you hear that and you're an altcoin maximalist, it kind of sucks, kind of hurts, because you're like, man, I put so much into that. But just remember that everybody who's watching this video, there is an altcoin season at some point. Bitcoin doesn't go up forever. Dominance doesn't go up to 99%, maybe. So just remember that's what it is. And I will just say this. I remember in 2017 when I got into it, altcoins were just going crazy. Then 2018 and 19, I would hear the same thing from the Bitcoin community. Like, look, there's dominance coming in. This is what happens. But then over time, there's an altcoin season. I hated them for that. And the reason was because I was Bitcoin light. So I understand right now, if you're Bitcoin light and you're altcoin heavy, I get it. But these are the things that we have to learn and moving forward. So having said all that, Guy, what do you got for us? Bitcoin dominance, think we're good? Or you think, Ben's crazy?
Can I submit an application myself? I want to see if I can introduce a new term into crypto. When Bitcoin dominance hits that 50% mark, can we use the term "it's Ben Cowaned"?
Looks like this Bitcoin dominance got Cowaned. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah. Oof, that Cowaned hard this morning. It's sort of on the same topic. I was I dropped into a crypto event in London. I'm still in the UK at the moment. Dropped into a crypto event in Canary Wharf in London yesterday. And it was kind of focused on the UK, but I was speaking. I got to chat to a few people afterwards, and I chatted to one guy who sort of straight up said, "Oh, by the way, I'm a big time Bitcoin maxi," and obviously, we talked about Bitcoin dominance a bit. Ben's name came up fairly quickly, and I swear to God, this guy almost made to cross himself when Ben's name was mentioned. Anyhow, yes. So I don't really, I can't really disagree with Ben on much there. I think, I think dominance could well be headed towards 60%. Sure. The way things are going. I think Bitcoin's only competitor for market cap. I think it's important to draw a slight distinction here between altcoins and then ETH and stable coins. And
right.
Really, all that competition for market cap is going to come from ETH and stables. So I think possibly the only thing that could put the brakes on Bitcoin dominance would be some regulatory clarity in the US and elsewhere, but particularly in the US, around ETH and stablecoins. That I think would certainly see some inflows into both.
Sure.
But I mean, what are the chances of that happening anytime soon? Pretty slim. So I'm just putting it out there to sort of for the sake of argument. I think if BlackRock's ETF application was to get rejected, that might slow it a bit. But again, I'm kind of with Ben as well. I think Bitcoin dominance really is kind of unstoppable at the moment. When that will change, I'm not sure. But as you say, Rob, alt season does eventually come around, but it really is just all Bitcoin at the moment, isn't it? And as you say, I think that's something people really need to be aware of.
Exactly. And then look, it's all you look at it. It's if you think that altcoins is around the corner and Bitcoin dominance is going up and your alts are going down, well, this is a buying opportunity for you. Not financial advice, but you have to look at it like that. If you really believe in the project, you're doing your research, go forward like that. Ben, sorry, what were you going to say?
I just wanted to say something because I mean, Guy said something that I think is really important. And that's, I don't actually and I've said this many times, but if people don't listen to my videos, they might not know, I don't really consider Ethereum an altcoin. I think that there's Bitcoin, there's Ethereum, and then you basically have everything else. I mean, you can separate the altcoin market and the stablecoin market, but I don't really put Ethereum in the class of altcoins, but I also don't really put it in the same class as Bitcoin either. I do think it's a blue chip with Bitcoin, actually. I think Bitcoin and Ethereum are both blue chip. You can even look at the Ethereum dominance and see that what Guy said, and I think you pulled it up, Rob. I mean, Guy, the Ethereum dominance has also been going up, right? It's just that the Bitcoin dominance has been going up faster.
Yeah. Exactly, and it's going pretty good. And then that's why there's this new exchange that was just put out by Citadel, Schwab, and Fidelity, and you can see the ones that are being listed are going to be Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin, and Ethereum. So when you take a look at those things, you're like, well, why do they do that? Well, those are the safest plays, and what the SEC may not consider a security. So anyhow, okay, so we're all with there. Let's move to a little bit of macro before we get to the big question for me is WEN ALTS. Powell. So the Powell pause, the Powell skip just came up. And I know, Ben, you and Gareth Soloway really broke this down pretty well in that video. It's why I'm encouraging people to take a listen. But let me start with Guy on this one. The Powell pause, is this enough for America? Because I know, when I was over in Europe, I saw inflation, but the small business owners and the people that I talked to said, no, it's much better now. There's things going on pretty well. So yes, I know it's in America, it's different, but things are going a little bit better. Here, if we take a look at inflation, things are going down. So Guy, I mean, just being over there, do you see that what Powell did is enough? And then where do we go from here?
I think, it seemed like a pause was probably the right thing to do at the moment. I guess it's a kind of wait and see approach that the Fed are adopting at the moment. I mean, Jerome is always pointing out, isn't he, that they're watching the data. True. And I guess, but something else that he pointed out in that press conference after they paused or skipped or whatever you want to call it, he did say that core inflation is still the one to watch. Obviously, headline inflation, it does seem to be coming down at a pretty decent clip. And I guess in a way that's what most people look like. And I guess that headline inflation figure is important in managing kind of inflation expectations. And I guess if people in the wider economy have the impression that inflation is going down, then they will act accordingly. And hopefully that should mean that prices don't climb up too much and expectations can be kind of managed. But as Jerome said, core inflation is still pretty sticky. It's still stuck around, I think it's 5.3%. And that has to show some positive signs of going down, I think, before, certainly before any idea of rate cuts can be considered. And I don't think we'll see any of those this year.
No.
So I think probably it does sound like, whilst core inflation is still stuck, I think they probably will want to you know, do go with those 2 subsequent hikes. That's what the dot plot seems to indicate. That's what most Fed members seem to think as well. So, yeah, I think, but again, we've got to wait for more of that data. We've got to see if what happens with unemployment as well, of course. But I think that core inflation figure is the really important one. And until that's firmly on its way down, I'm not sure that you can really say that the Fed has done enough if they're targeting 2%, which is what they keep saying every single time. So I think there is still work to do on that front.
Yeah, and that's why, like, I pulled up that that Truflation data point, and what they do is they just use data from like 10,000 different sources. They use Chainlink as an oracle to pull in data in real time. So it's just something to take a look at. If people don't trust the data that's being given by the government, maybe there's another way to do it. Truflation, there's a link in the website. And then for Ben, same question. I know you and Gareth went over this pretty much in detail. Do you think this is enough, or do you think that they should actually keep hammering it like they did, like they made the mistake in the 70s?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think that, I mean, so first of all, it's not just about rate hikes, right? It's also about how long they hold them there. That's why they said higher for longer, right? So it's also a function of time. I mean, if you go to 5.5% and then you're only there for a month and you come back down, that's not really going to accomplish much. If you go to 5.5% and you stay there for a year, that will start to have an effect. So, I mean, I think it's certainly possible they do another 25 basis point rate hike. I mean, maybe they feel like they need to go further than that. But I also think there is some credibility to the idea that they have gone as far as they need to. They just need to hold them there, right? And I mean, again, like they probably will hike again. I mean, I think the bond market is, I haven't even looked, but I'm pretty sure the bond market is pricing in another hike in July. So I would typically just defer to those investors, because they tend to get it right when, especially going into the meeting, they'll usually know. And you could even argue that the Fed just follows what the market says they're going to do. But yeah, I mean, yeah, so you have it right there, about a 74% chance of another rate hike. I think the hard part is not so much the rate hikes. It's just how long do they have the courage to hold them, at these higher levels? Can they do it for the next, I mean, as Guy said, hold them here for the entire year? I think they will. I think they probably will not be cutting this year. Based on things that Powell has said, if they do cut this year, then that kind of throws everything he said out the window. I mean, he's even alluded to the idea of no rate cuts for 2 years, I think. So if he cuts them in the next 6 months, then that really goes against like really everything that he's been saying. So I think it's not just about the rate hikes. It's also about they need to hold them at these higher levels for a long period of time for it to have a lasting impact. And then also too, there's also the QT, right? Like they're reducing the size of their balance sheet. That's going to have some effect. And you also have things like the the money supply in general is the percentage change year over year is negative, and that's going to be a deflationary tailwind. I mean, I'm not saying that we see deflation, but if the money supply is going down, that is, if it goes down forever, right, then it would be deflationary. So that's the other thing to keep an eye on as well. So I think there's a lot of variables. I do think in terms of interest rate hikes, I think they're really close to the terminal rate, and it's more so they just need to hold them there for probably a year. And if they do that, then I think we will see inflation closer to their target.
Let's hope so. I think it's going to get sticky. I think they're going to be maybe, like, I think Garrett talked about this, maybe 3%. They get stuck there for a while, and then hopefully it goes on to 2%. But I mean, that's up to them. We'll see how it all works out. Our job, though, as investors, is to figure out what comes next. And what comes next for me is WEN ALTS. So as we answer this, I'll start with Ben. If you got questions, put those in the comments section. I'll pull those up as much as possible. And Ben, WEN ALTS, because like we talked about, there is an altcoin season right around the bend, right? I mean, you even have it on your website. So altcoin season, when does this happen? Is it ever going to happen? What's your thoughts?
So I would say that when you think about alt season, we always have to like quantify exactly what that even means, right? Like if you go back and look at 2018, we came out of Bitcoin season, but it wasn't into alt season. It was more so just everything was going down, but Bitcoin started to go down quicker than the altcoin market, and that marked the the end. I think that for me, I've had several different sort of like, it's like if then statements, right? So like the first one, the first if then statement was, or not maybe if then statement, but first of all, it was December 2022 at the earliest, right? So like at the absolute earliest, December 2022 is when I was going to be interested in the altcoin market. That was number one. So that was when I first started to consider them. I didn't really consider them in Q3 because I'm like, well, I think Bitcoin's going to collapse at the end of the year like it always does in these bear market years. But then it was, well, the dominance is still too low to justify altcoin accumulation for me, right? Like I can't, like, Rob talks about it forever and he's in my head about it. Like, I'm just like, okay, well, we got to see the dominance at a much higher level. So sort of the secondary aspect of it was I want to see, so December 2022 at the earliest. Then I need to see the dominance above or around 60%. And we're not there yet, right? Now, that's not to say that some altcoins haven't bottomed on their USD pairs. I'm not saying that I think that a lot of them probably haven't. And just a couple weeks ago, a lot of these altcoins were putting in new lows. A lot of people are giving me a hard time for it, but we had Cardano, Avalanche, Chainlink, and Polkadot all put in new lows this cycle, legitimately like 2 weeks ago. So it really does go to show you how altcoins can put in new lows in the pre-halving years and even potentially the early stage of the halving year, even if Bitcoin isn't, right? I mean, and imagine if Bitcoin goes back down to like 20K or 15K. What do you think happens to the altcoin market in that scenario, considering that many of them are already putting in new lows? So, my thinking is Bitcoin is going to be the much safer play. If for every dollar you want to put into crypto, I think that Bitcoin is the safer play until the dominance is around 60%. Now, historically, what I would say that we're in right now is more so similar to the penultimate stage of the altcoin reckoning. So I've talked about the altcoin reckoning for the last 18 months. It's where altcoins get wrecked on their Bitcoin pairs. I think we're in the penultimate stage of the altcoin reckoning, which is the second to last, right? So I think there's one more stage after this one. And I think it's probably going to be finalized this year. But a large part of the phase that we're in right now is just the Bitcoin dominance rally. And that, I think, needs to last for a couple more months. So if we just fast forward in our mind, let's say July, August, let's say dominance is approaching 60% by August or September, then what I'm looking for is sort of the secondary scare on Bitcoin that we always get. And that is where I think it would be time to get into the altcoin market. If you're not familiar with that, it's more so this idea that, Bitcoin finds its first bottom, sometime in its primary bear market year, right? 2014, 2018, 2022. But then in 2015, we had a double bottom on Bitcoin in August in Q3. And then in 2020, we had a higher low in March. And it was also after the uninversion of the yield curve as well. I mean, again, you might call it a black swan, but I would say, well, the yield curve, it tells you if the economy is sick or not and can handle a bad event. And if once you get the uninversion of it, it tells you the economy is really sick and anything can tip us into a recession. So that is what I would be looking towards, because by that point, you'll have your bear market, right? Your 2022 bear market. You'll have had the dominance rally by Bitcoin. And then you'll have your secondary scare that we normally see with Bitcoin before you get out into, say, like late 2024 or 2025 timeframe. So that's what I'm ultimately looking for. Does it happen? Does it have to happen? No. I mean, it doesn't have to happen. But in terms of taking on the risk of the altcoin market, I would really like to see some of these things play out. And I think at the very least, you want to see the dominance of Bitcoin around 60%. And Rob, the funny thing is a lot of people, they don't really like the dominance metric because, or they say it's irrelevant, especially the people that won alt season. But the funny thing is that if you're actually knowledgeable about how that chart that you were showing earlier, it's only after high dominance that alt season really takes off, right? Alt season occurs from 60 or 70% Bitcoin dominance because it has so much room to go down. When dominance is at 40%, the likelihood of it going to 20 or 30% to support an alt season is really, really low. But when dominance is at, say, 60% or 70%, and I'm not even saying, I'm not really that optimistic about it reaching 70%. It could, but I think 60% should be the main target. But it's from those levels that you can actually get the alt season that everyone wants, right? So maybe by that time, everyone will love Bitcoin dominance because it'll be implying an alt season. But when it's going up and it's been spending 2 years trying to break these range highs, the minute it breaks, I think you just have to let it rally for a few months. You come back and you see which altcoins are surviving and still are still here. And again, their USD pairs are irrelevant. A lot of the altcoins, they just die out during this phase of the cycle, right? They go away. You don't hear from them anymore. So you just have to be patient, wait to see which ones survive, and at some point they bottom out against Bitcoin. But a lot of altcoins are oscillators at best against Bitcoin, and they're still well off their range lows. So I still think a lot of altcoins still need to drop, probably 30-40% against Bitcoin.
Well, I hope you're right, because that would be a fantastic buying opportunity for some of us. And then before I move on to Guy, is there a way to do some like a Bitcoin dominance overlay on this chart?
Probably not this one. If you go to the workbench, you could probably figure it out. But we figured it another time.
That was just a selfish question for me. All right, Guy, what do you think here? Altcoin season, when alts, you know what? Here's the question I have for you right now is, are you buying alts at all? Are you just staying away from them? Are you buying anything? Because I know you like to keep things simple because you're smarter than me. So how does that work out?
I'm certainly keeping things simple. I mean, I've got my inner Ben Cowan is very loud at the moment, so he's guiding me a lot. No, yeah. In terms of what Ben was talking about, I don't. There's nothing I can really disagree with him on there. All I would add in terms of what I would like to see, I think, is kind of an improvement in the narrative around crypto. Around crypto itself. I think that would for me probably be a sign that perhaps altcoins could be about to have their moment. But I mean that requires quite a lot. That requires things like positive noises from the SEC, for example. And again, that's not something you would want to hold your breath on for any length of time. So yeah, if you want the rainbow, you've got to put up with the rain, and I think it's going to be raining in that sense for quite a long time. The rain in this case, I guess, being Bitcoin dominance, as Ben says. I think there are other things to look out for. Obviously, I mentioned the SEC. I think it'll be worth keeping an eye on developments elsewhere. I think Hong Kong, especially, it'll be interesting to see what kind of altcoins become available to retail investors there. Obviously, that's 1st of June was when that was sort of legalized, as it were, in Hong Kong, this retail crypto trading. But of course, as we now know, we're going to have to wait quite a while for exchanges there to actually get registered and actually be able to offer any sort of crypto. So yeah, I mean that could perhaps tie in with when Bitcoin dominance is starting to peak, and hopefully, as I'd say, the narrative around crypto has improved. There's not so much negativity around. We're starting to see clear regulations in at least a few more countries. That I think would be the time to start getting interested again.
Gotcha. Yeah, I got to agree with you on that one. I will just say that, during this time, there's so many different ways to play it for, what people want to do. I know a lot of people will say, or some people will say, look, if the dominance is going to go up, Bitcoin's going to go up. I'm just going to put everything into Bitcoin, wait for it to go all the way up. And then once altcoin season comes, then I'll switch everything over. I'll sell some Bitcoin and I'll put it into alts. You can do that, but for me, it's a little bit more. It's tougher for me to do those things. That's why I am a little bit different than other people, and I think there's just a wide swath of people what they want to do. I will say this: if you're looking for a little information about what things would look like in the past, there's a great website. It's called dca-cc.com. And I linked this in the description. I put it in the chat right now. And what you can do is you can take any coin that you so choose and just take a look at the data. Bitcoin, Ethereum, I think it's all the way down to the top 20 to Chainlink. And you can say when you're going to start DCAing, when it goes to, and taking a look at the past and how much you want to do. And it'll tell you what your return on investment is historically. And I took a look at that, and we talk about this in the channel. And again, like, it's all how you want to do it. Ben's right in about the safest play is Bitcoin. And it's true. Historically, it really has been. But then there's some of you gamblers out there, some degens, but like, you know what? I just want to gamble a little bit, whether that be 100%, which is not a good idea, or what it's a little bit less. Maybe it's a 75-25 split. But again, like, you can see this on DCA-CC, and I did these charts. If you just historically, the last cycle, if you started on 2018 on January 1st, and you put $100 in every week, you would have 7x to the top. In 2019, if you would have started on 2019, January 1st, you would have 6.5x. 2020, it would have been 4x. And if you would have gotten the bull run, it's 1.5x. The same thing with Ethereum. If you did Ethereum in 2018 to the top, you 16x'd. In 2019, which is a pretty better year, and don't do what I do, which is invest in 2018, you would have 17x'd. 2020, 11x. 2021, just a 2x. So as we get closer to the bull run and you get into these alts, the return on investment does go down. Cardano, 35x in 2018, 2019 at 39x, 2020, 26x, and a 3x. And just real quick, just remember, and Ben said it, or maybe this guy said that not all these alts are coming back. Some of them are just going to suck, and you're going to lose out. And I always say it's a dash of salt. If you would have gotten a dash in 2018, it would have been a junky 3x for 4 years, or salt, you would still be underwater. So just remember that moving forward. And that's where a little bit things like we disagree on some stuff, and that's okay. You can do whatever you want to do. But that concludes us talking. Let's take some questions, gentlemen. All right. And then we'll get out of here because Ben's got a vacation to hit up. Let's see. This one was from my group. And there was 2 questions. The first one is from Noah. Next one's from JH, and it says, do they, which would be Ben and Guy, do you believe in the BRICS movement with an adopter of cryptocurrency? And then JH asks, if you guys could ask Ben or Guy any question in the market, when was your I get it moment with Bitcoin? So we'll start with the first one here, the BRICS movement. Guy, what do you think about that? Is it going to take hold, and is the Bitcoin going to not take over, or are they just going to use everything as far as that currency?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, the BRICS one. I mean, we've already seen sort of some countries, Russia in particular, sort of start talking more about using Bitcoin for trade, haven't they? And obviously that's because, well, they're under sanctions,
right?
First and foremost. But I think it could become a narrative with BRICS, because not so much perhaps the BRICS countries using it necessarily all themselves, but I really think if we keep going in this direction of having a bipolar or a multipolar world where, you know, there are these competing spheres of influence and a lot of tension between them, and you have this situation whereby no one wants to use the currency of, you know, no one wants to use a rival currency. And that's obviously a lot of the impetus behind countries moving away from the dollar at the moment. Then I can see a situation whereby something like BTC becomes that really useful medium for people kind of caught between those poles to actually get things done, to actually move money across borders, to facilitate international trade. When I think countries and spheres of influence are likely going to become a lot more protectionist towards their own currencies. So I can see something like that happening. I'm not sure BRICS themselves. I mean, I think we'd certainly see crypto adoption in BRICS countries, especially if the US's attitude to crypto was still very hostile. I think they would certainly look to take advantage of that situation. Whether or not they'll actually, adopt it as adopt crypto in some form as something between themselves, I'm not so sure.
Got it. I could go with that. And then when was your aha moment for Bitcoin? Because you've been in it for a long time.
Yeah, I think the first moment that I really, it was when I read back. It was so I discovered, I was sort of starting to read up on Bitcoin in 2013 and 2014, and then I stumbled across an article, an interview in, I can't remember which paper it was, but an interview that had been conducted in 2011, and they republished it. Where they talked to Alistair Darling, who was the Chancellor of the Exchequer, the UK Chancellor of the Exchequer, in 2008. And he was talking about how close they came to running out of money, how close we got, within hours, apparently, of cash machines no longer dispensing cash in the UK. And like, for me, that was just like, that was that moment. It was like, wow, they've really mismanaged this. It's such a, we came so close to what would have been complete anarchy, I think, certainly for a period of time. And for me, and that was a moment for me where I was like, yes, we do this idea of something that is controlled, that isn't just printed into oblivion, that isn't in the hands of bankers and other corrupt entities like that. That for me was a great kind of argument for Bitcoin, if you like.
I can see that. That's what kind of led me to as well. Ben, what do you got? BRICS and the Bitcoin aha moment.
I mean, with the BRICS, honestly, I have no idea if they're going to adopt crypto as, I mean, they could. I have no idea. So I'll defer to your guys' opinion on that. I think crypto in general is an interesting thing, because my undergrad was in math, and I took an elective back in 2011 on cryptography, and that was actually when I first learned about Bitcoin. But I wouldn't, I certainly wouldn't say that was my aha moment, right? Like, it was just sort of like an acknowledgement that it existed. I don't really think I had the aha moment until maybe like 5 or 6 years after that, when I thought it had more staying power, I mean, I think, because I'm very much in the idea of, like, the market will decide, how important this technology is or not. And in 2015, it was kind of depressing. I mean, you look at a chart now, and 2015 was just sort of this base year to a massive bull market, right? But when you were living through 2015, and you came out of 2014 where Bitcoin dropped like 90%, and then it went up, and then it dropped, back down to the lows, or almost a higher low, and then it went up again, and then in August of 2015 it dropped back down to the low again. I was pretty discouraged. But then I probably in the early stages of 2016 is more so when I recognized that it did have more staying power. Because, I mean, again, I like the idea. Of course, I like the idea of distributed ledger technology, and having a cap on the supply, not just being able to print it to oblivion, especially what the Fed has been doing recently. But even with all that, it doesn't necessarily mean it has value. If the market decides it has value, then it will. And so I think probably by the 2016 bull market, it was more obvious, because there are things in the world that are, again, that have low supply, but that doesn't necessarily mean they are intrinsically valuable, right? It's just the market will ultimately decide. And you can go create a copy of Bitcoin right now, but it doesn't mean the exact same thing, right? It doesn't mean it's going to be valuable, because the market probably won't decide that it is, right? It's Bitcoin. It's the one that was first, and it's been around the longest. It's the most trusted. So I'd say it's probably about, my guess, 2016 or so.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, it's the same thing, kind of like with me. First of all, the BRICS nations, I mean, look, as far as like a world reserve currency, the US dollar, unfortunately, we we're the thinnest fat person, I guess you would say. We are the best option of the worst options as far as world reserve currency. I'm not for sure how much the world reserve currency will go down. Janet Yellen thinks it will, but who knows? And as far as like the Bitcoin aha moment, people already know the story about that. But the thing that I saw is because wasn't really invested into what's happening with like the economics and inflation and money printing and quantitative easing. I didn't know all that stuff until I got into crypto. And then when I figured it out about inflation and the M2 money supply, I'm like, holy smokes, there's no way this is sustainable. And then we took a look at, what is money? It's a store of value and a medium of exchange. I took a look at all the different countries like the Greece and Venezuela and the things that were getting inflated all the way out of the world. I thought to myself, there's no way this can be sustainable, so it has to be a better option. And you can opt out with Bitcoin. It's the only one that we have. So when I got away from the number go up part and I figured out the other part about money and store of value and medium of exchange, I go, this is a much better option. So that was my thing. Having said that, let's take another question. This is from Telegram. So this is gonna be hard to see, unfortunately, but I'll just read them out to you. This is Ben's Telegram group. Pretty good information on there. And if you get into the website, you pretty much get access to this, but there's two types. And here's what we got. Let's see. Oh, here's a question from R saying, do ETF applicants buy Bitcoin before they apply or after it's approved? Futures, they don't buy anything. And with spot ETFs, they have to buy Bitcoin, but they have to have it approved first, unless I'm unaware of this one. What do you guys have an answer for this one?
I must say, I really don't know. That's something that did cross my mind recently as well. When they get the approval, do they then go and buy a certain amount of BTC sort of on spec and just kind of top it up as and when? I really don't know. I'd be very interested to know the answer to that myself.
Yeah, I think they have to wait for approval, but yeah, I could be wrong. Here's one. This one would go back to the Ben and Gareth Soloway. Can you look at credit card balances? There's a theory that credit card balances spiked in 2022. When low introductory rates on those cards expire, this could trigger recession. Thoughts on this, Ben?
I mean, my general opinion. I mean, look, well, the stock market climbs the wall. There's so many things we can worry about, right? There's student loans, there's credit card debt, there's everything, right? I think the only thing that really matters is when the labor market goes. I think most everything else is like, I'm not saying these other things can't have effects, like they can for sure, but there's so many there's like 100 different things to worry about. Who knows what it's actually going to be? Normally it's not until the labor market finally gives way that that the market will actually start to care, unless it's like unless it's like a pandemic, right? Like if it's a pandemic, then okay, fine, like that will of course create panic. If it's something we've never really experienced before, or it's been 100 years since we last experienced it, like that could of course cause issues. But normally it's the labor market. I think the labor market is the thing to look at. By the way, I don't even know, I guess we got initial claims. We got a new number today, in fact, and it was at 264,000, which is now we have 3 data points in the 260s. So look, I mean, I think if it gets into the 300s and the 400s, like that's going to be a pretty bad sign. But the fact that it's moved from the 240s up to the 260s, and it's now the 3rd week in a row at the 260s, it is showing that the labor market is softening up. I mean, again, 260 isn't really that much to worry about in the grand scheme of things, but it shows you the trend is heading in the wrong direction. And
you're talking about the initial jobless claims.
Initial claims. Like if you look at it, it comes out every Thursday morning,
right?
And it's basically just been slowly moving up. But the reason why it's important is because it is a leading indicator for the unemployment rate, and it starts to go up maybe about half a year before the unemployment rate does, and initial claims bottomed out about if you actually, Rob, if you just quickly click on the workbench at the top of the website, and I can show. Do you see what I'm saying? It's next. And then there's a. Do you see the unemployment rate versus claims to the left, just to the left, 4th one down? That one. Click on that one, and you can kind of see it'll show initial claims, continued claims, the unemployment rate, and recessions. And you can see how the initial claims, which is the green line, is really starting to move up. And normally it leads the unemployment rate. So I think that is sort of that's probably the bigger thing to worry about. I mean, there's 1,000 different things we can worry about, right? You know, but that's the labor market's probably the main thing to worry about.
Eesh. Well, there we go. All right. So initial claims are up, but I mean, I know we don't want to hear this, but this could actually be a positive thing for the Fed to go, okay, well, our job is being done. Maybe we don't have to hike so much and go from there. All right. We'll take a couple more questions from folks in the chat, and we'll go from there, and we'll get out of here. Let's just do this one. Best performer for next run. This is for fun. Let's just leave out of here with a little bit of hopium and get out of here. What do you guys think is the best performer for the next run? The ones that, not the safest, but let's just say the crazy blow off 100,000x. Oh, I can see Ben sweating already. All right.
I'm not going to provide an answer. You're not gonna weasel an altcoin out of me right now. The only thing I'll say is that normally Ethereum outperforms Bitcoin from bottom to top. So because the only two I've really talked about are those two, I would say that it's likely that Ethereum will outperform Bitcoin again from the actual bottom to the actual top. But I also think that Bitcoin will hit its all-time high before Ethereum will. Again, last cycle when Bitcoin was at an all-time high, when Bitcoin hit 20K, Ethereum was at like $700, like $600 or $700. It was like half of its all-time high. I think you'll see the same thing happen again. I mean, you could see Bitcoin one day at 70K, and Ethereum might still be hanging out at $2,500. As crazy as that sounds, and it doesn't mean that Ethereum won't break its all-time high. It's just normally Bitcoin leads the bull run, and then everything else follows. So Ethereum will probably outperform Bitcoin from bottom to top, but Bitcoin will likely outperform Bitcoin will likely outperform Ethereum in the initial phase of the bull run.
Good enough. I got Ben to talk about something, a blue chip. Good deal. Guy, what do you got? What do you think?
Okay. No. I'm just. I've no idea. I'm afraid. What I do think though is probably the thing that will surprise us more, that will really shock everyone and have some absolutely face-melting gains. It just doesn't exist yet.
It could be true.
It'll be one of these brand new projects that is being incubated at the moment. It's bubbling under. We don't really know anything about it, and it will emerge at probably just the right moment, and it'll go crazy. So again, like I've sort of avoided naming any particular one, apart from, you know, in order to not be proved wrong in future. But I do honestly believe that it probably isn't one that anyone knows about just yet. And failing that, maybe it'll be Pepe. Who knows? It's
maybe it'll be Pepe. All right, everybody, let's get out of here. I will just say this: diversify. Follow the rules. Right to Ben's left, or underneath Ben and to the left of Guy. It's all gone. Don't spend more than you can afford to lose. Everything's a scam until proven otherwise. Don't leave anything on exchanges. Don't take any leverage and take profits along the way. Nobody ever went broke taking profits. Gentlemen, thank you so much for stopping by. I appreciate it. And of course, you watching, we will see you guys on the next one.
Yep.
Thanks, everyone.